Hey everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and this is my review for Don't Worry Darling, which I'm sure you've heard way too much of before it even came out, but it has now come out, so I actually have things to say about the movie. But before we get to the movie itself, I know, there's drama, there's tea to spill about Don't Worry Darling, but I don't feel like I'm in the right position to be talking about all the tea and drama, because while I know what's going on, I feel like there are so many other great outlets and sources to get all that information from. Actually, a great friend of mine, Elizabeth Valenti, who I've collaborated with on this channel, on her channel, she did an amazing video breaking down the drama and all the ins and outs on what actually happened on the Don't Worry Darling set, on the whole press tour, the whole spitgate where Harry Styles supposedly spit on Chris Pine, because that is, you know, headlining news. All of that can be found in her video and so many other videos out there. The more I thought about the film and my own experience with this film, the more I realized that some of the outside drama, as much as we'd like to separate it from the art, informs the art a little bit more than we'd like to admit. I think the big criticism that has surrounded this film, aside from all the drama from its stars and its director, is the performance of Harry Styles. And I will first and foremost say, I love Harry Styles as a performer, as a singer, as a pop culture icon. I'm really impressed with just how much he's blown up as a superstar. He's in my very own city, New York City. I don't know if he's still there, but he was doing concert after concert every single night. He was selling out Madison Square Garden. That is something that is just so admirable and so impressive to see from any performer, no matter whether I like the genre of music or not. Like, just the stardom he has been able to make and create in just the few years he has been working as a solo artist is so impressive, and of course dating back to when he was in his boy band age. I do admire him so much as a pop culture figure, as a star, but as an actor, I think those criticisms are a little warranted.
Not everyone gets this opportunity. And if you keep talking like this, you're going to put it all at risk.
Some people just expect that because you have that performative spark and pizzazz and showmanship that it's going to translate to acting very well. And for some performances, it does. There are some performances where big superstar musicians can step into those shoes and deliver really, really amazing performances. But in a film like this, the drama is so much more subdued. It's really based in interaction and more intimate moments. Some people don't realize that making the leap from huge sold-out concerts and then going to a much smaller, more intimate setting, it doesn't always translate well. Not everyone is going to give a Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born performance. So I will defend Harry Styles to that extent, to say that, yeah, I know the performance, it leaves a lot to be desired, but at the same time, you're very rarely going to get an amazing performance on the first go, on the first try. Cycling back to what I said about the drama, I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of it, but I think one important aspect is the fact that Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles were apparently in a relationship, maybe are still in a relationship. That I don't really know. But I think when your weak link is Harry Styles in this cast, which is full of amazing performances. I will talk more about Florence Pugh, but Florence Pugh is fantastic. Chris Pine is great. Olivia Wilde herself is in the film, and she's great. Nick Kroll, Gemma Chan. All these people are really, really great, and Harry Styles, being the male lead of this film, is seemingly dropping the ball at times. And he's not, like I said, terrible in this, but I think compared to all the other actors who are more seasoned, who are more professional, this is a guy who's coming from a whole different world. He stands out as the weak link, and I think it all goes back to the fact that, was he ever going to be in this movie if Olivia Wilde wasn't the director? And I don't know that answer. Maybe he would have. Maybe, I don't know all the ins and outs of the casting on how he got the role, but just when you see that him and Olivia Wilde are so connected in real life, it begins to spin the wheels in your head a little bit of like, was this a casting choice from the casting department intentionally because he was the best one for the role? Or is this, you know, Olivia Wilde's boyfriend, he's also a big mega star, let's put him in this movie? And I think if that is the case, then I think the outside drama has to play into this a little bit. I haven't really gotten to the plot of the film, but the plot is pretty self-explanatory. There's a seemingly idyllic neighborhood where everything's perfect, everyone's happy, and of course, things start to go wrong. Florence Pugh's character starts to see things. Her relationship with Harry Styles goes in certain directions. She finds out the truth behind all the madness that is occurring around her. And I won't go too far into the twists and turns of the film, obviously, because this is a non-spoiler review, but I think one thing that I have to say about the film is that the plot twists and turns, while maybe unexpected at times, don't feel like anything fresh or original or something that we haven't seen in other movies. I feel like a lot of movies have important themes to talk about and important things to say and important messages, and this film does too. This has a lot to say about feminism and gender roles and the bad things about past societal norms that have seemingly gotten better, but that we also do not want to fear into slipping into again. I think there's a lot of great stuff to say about all that, but setting it in this little bubble of a neighborhood, I feel like we've seen so many films use this kind of plot device, this idyllic neighborhood, to kind of convey the similar themes and other themes. Stuff like Truman Show doesn't necessarily tackle things like this, but it does have the same premise of this kind of secluded neighborhood. The person who's at the center of all the action is starting to figure out the ins and outs of what may be going on in this neighborhood. We even saw it recently with WandaVision, and I know a lot of people have made similarities to WandaVision because it's a similar thing. That was more about grief and trauma, less about men and women's roles in society, but again, that is using the template of this, you know, cozy little neighborhood where things just start spiraling out of control, even though everyone's happy and dandy and wearing bright, colorful costumes. I just feel like we've been seeing this time and time again, not just recently, but for so long, decades and decades and decades. Pleasantville, another example. And again, these are great films and great series. In WandaVision's case, like, I really do like all of them and they do a good job, but I just feel like now it's becoming a bit of a trope. And I think as film history progresses, as we get further and further into just the lexicon of cinematic history, things that were once fresh become tropes. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means history and cinema is evolving, but at the same time, it makes films like Don't Worry, Darling feel like they're a lot less inspired than I think the director intended. I also said I wasn't going to get into spoilers, and I'm not, but I do think a lot of the other criticisms that I have for this film involve the twist, and not necessarily the twist itself. Like I said earlier, it's a little bit predictable, but it's not the fact that it's predictable. It's the fact that there's so much buildup. There's almost a whole, I'd say 3/4 of the film is building up to what is exactly going on. The greatest films, you know, build up and set up some great ideas, have a really climactic twist, a really big shock, and then have a really fitting payoff. And I feel like this film is so much build up, a twist that is pretty predictable, and even if you didn't see it coming, it's still not, you know, mind-blowing enough to feel like anything incredibly fresh or new. And then the payoff is so short-lived. I feel like the payoff only lasts for about 10 minutes, and there are introductions of story beats and little things in that payoff that are really interesting that just never see their full potential. And I think that's the problem with this film, is not necessarily what the plot twists are and not necessarily what the buildup is and what the payoff is, but the structuring of that. I was a big fan of Olivia Wilde's first film, Booksmart, and I think one of the strong suits, in addition to some of the other cast members, aside from Harry Styles, is the actual style. I think Olivia Wilde brings a lot of interesting style to the film. I think there are some interesting visuals. I think the actual set designs, the costumes, everything looks cool in kind of creating this atmosphere, and I think she's good at creating a sense of atmosphere. Just it didn't have the same oomph that other filmmakers early in their careers are having, like Jordan Peele, who is continuing to deliver on all ends, on thrills, on smaller moments, on building suspense. And I feel like Olivia Wilde, while this is admirable to see her taking a much bigger swing than her coming-of-age debut film, I feel like that coming-of-age debut film, she was able to show a lot more personality as a director in that smaller sense than she is in this bigger, grander sense with this more genre-based film. The last thing I'll say about Don't Worry, Darling is that despite all of its flaws, I still would recommend it at the end of the day, purely and solely for Florence Pugh. And I wanted to end on this note because I want to end on such a positive note. She is probably my favorite current up-and-coming actress. I don't even want to say up-and-coming because she's made her big breaks in stuff like Little Women, Midsommar, Fighting with My Family, obviously Black Widow. But I feel like still she's just finally emerging into the like really huge stratosphere. And I'm so excited to see her career take off even more. I think she has shown so much versatility in the few years we've been seeing her as a performer.
Until we try to remember things that they want us to forget.
I am just so amazed at everything she does. So much so that I honestly don't think Harry Styles is a terrible actor, but next to Florence Pugh, she is so good that he looks even worse in comparison. And that comes back to my overarching theme of, you know, I just think him being the lead central figure of this film does really burden the film in a lot of ways. A lot of the twists and payoffs would have been much more effective if we were as invested in Harry Styles' character as we were Florence Pugh's, because because while this is Florence Pugh's movie, she is the central figure. She is the standout. She is the protagonist. I think a lot of it is their relationship, and we just don't buy their relationship because she's giving so much and he's just giving, you know, an okay performance, but obviously a very early performance. Someone who has a lot more work to do as an actor, where she is ready for Oscars. She probably should have about 2 or 3 right now. Like, she is that good. It is a shame that the film does not necessarily live up to all of its strengths, but I think Florence Pugh is such a strength that at the end of the day, while I am middle of the road, more skewed negatively on the film, I do still think everyone should go check it out for her performance. And because if you are a Harry Styles fan, you're probably going to get a kick out of him doing this performance. Yes, his accent kind of spans from Yorkshire accent to the Bronx and then back down south and then back up to London. I don't really know what the accent is doing, but again, I think if you're a Harry Styles fan, you might as well go check it out because it's interesting, to say the least.
Our life, Alice, our life together.
And if you're looking for interesting direction, there's some interesting direction there, but I think it's in a narrative that is very underwhelming. I think the writing isn't anything special. I just think the actual structuring of the plot, again, with its twists and with its conclusion, it's very oddly proportioned in how much of the conclusion and resolution we get and how much buildup we get when we need more of that resolution, because that's the most interesting part for me. So it is a mixed bag, but I do recommend it for some of those reasons, and because why not be a part of this discussion? I mean, you've spent so much time online looking at all the drama and determining whether or not Harry Styles spit on Chris Pine, which I was also very much, you know, eyes glued to the TV to see. What is the next big piece of news? So, you know, you've already made it this far. You might as well go see it. So that was my review for Don't Worry, Darling. Don't worry. Even if you don't love this film, I'm sure there are going to be plenty of other great films coming right down the way. If you saw Don't Worry, Darling, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Do you think this is a step forward for the thriller genre and for Olivia Wilde's career, or do you think it's just not the same as it was?